The repair bay of Starbase Centauri hummed with activity as Lieutenant James Harrison wiped grease from his hands, surveying his work on the sleek vessel before him. The quantum drive coupling had been trickier than expected, but after 6 hours of careful calibration, he'd finally gotten it purring like a kitten. As head of engineering for the station's civilian repair division, he'd seen his share of unusual ships, but this one was different. The vessel belonged to Lady Thura Voss, a prominent member of the Lysarian High Council. The Lysarians were known for their advanced biotechnology and striking appearance. Their iridescent skin shifted colors with their emotions, and their large, multifaceted eyes seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Lady Voss stood nearby, her skin shimmering with hints of gold that James had learned indicated pleasure. "Remarkable work, Lieutenant Harrison," she said, her melodic voice carrying the distinctive harmonic undertones of her species. "I've had this ship serviced on 3 different stations, but none could identify the problem so quickly." James smiled, tucking his tools back into their case. The quantum resonance patterns in Lysarian drives are similar to Earth's early experiments with fold space technology. "I wrote my thesis on comparative propulsion systems." "Did you now?" Lady Voss's skin flickered with an interesting pattern of blue and silver. "Curiosity, perhaps?" "Tell me, Lieutenant, how long have you been stationed here?" "For years, my lady. I transferred after completing my advanced engineering certification." "And in all that time, no partner?" Her question caught him off guard, though her tone remained casual. "A brilliant young human such as yourself must have many admirers." James chuckled, closing his toolkit. "My work keeps me busy. Besides, relationships are complicated out here on the frontier." "Ah, but the most worthwhile things often are." Lady Voss's skin shifted to a warm rose gold. "You know, my granddaughter Naira is the head researcher at our Biotechnology Institute. She's absolutely brilliant, pioneering work in cross-species medical applications. She'll be visiting the station next week to deliver a lecture on her latest breakthrough." James recognized the subtle matchmaking attempt but found himself intrigued despite his usual wariness of such setups. He'd read about Naira Voss's work. Her papers on adaptive medical nanites had revolutionized emergency medicine. "Perhaps," Lady Voss continued, her skin now pulsing with gentle waves of silver, "you'd be interested in attending? The technical aspects of her research often go over the heads of most attendees. It would be refreshing to have someone present who could appreciate the engineering principles involved." Before James could respond, his comlink chimed with an urgent repair request. "I'd be honored, Lady Voss, but duty calls. Another ship needs emergency repairs." Of course, of course. The lecture is next Thursday at the Grand Assembly Hall. I'll make sure your name is on the guest list." Her skin rippled with satisfaction as she glided toward the bay's exit, pausing briefly. "Oh, and Lieutenant? The reception afterward is quite exclusive. I'll ensure you receive an invitation to that as well." As James gathered his tools for the next job, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just been expertly maneuvered by one of the craftiest diplomats in the sector. And somehow, he didn't mind at all. Lady Voss's reputation for political matchmaking was legendary. She'd arranged at least 6 interspecies marriages that had led to significant trade agreements and technological exchanges. The week passed quickly, filled with the usual parade of maintenance requests and engineering emergencies. Before he knew it, Thursday arrived, and James found himself standing in front of his quarters mirror, adjusting the formal uniform he rarely wore. The silver bars of his rank gleamed against the deep blue fabric, and he'd actually made an effort to tame his usually unruly dark hair. The Grand Assembly Hall was packed with beings from dozens of species, all gathered to hear about the latest advancements in biotechnology. James found his reserved seat near the front, noting with amusement that it offered an excellent view of the speaker's podium. Lady Voss's attention to detail was impressive. When Naira Voss took the stage, James understood why her grandmother had been so insistent on his attendance. She moved with a natural grace that complemented her striking appearance, her skin shifting through subtle shades of blue and green as she spoke, betraying her excitement about her work. Her eyes, unlike her grandmother's silver ones, were a deep violet that seemed to catch the light in fascinating ways. But it was her brilliant mind that truly captured his attention. As she explained the intricate details of her latest breakthrough, James found himself leaning forward, completely engrossed. She'd managed to create a revolutionary interface between organic and mechanical systems, something that could transform both medical treatment and engineering applications. The lecture flew by, and before he knew it, the audience was applauding enthusiastically. As people began filing out toward the reception area, James felt a gentle touch on his shoulder. Lady Voss stood there, her skin glowing with obvious satisfaction. "I knew you'd appreciate her work, Lieutenant. Come, you simply must meet her properly. I'm sure you have dozens of questions about the engineering applications." And just like that, James found himself being steered toward a new adventure, one that would change not only his life but the relationship between two species. Lady Voss's skin sparkled with triumphant gold, and he couldn't help but wonder if she'd planned this all along. The reception hall sparkled with holographic displays of Naira's research, creating an ethereal atmosphere as beings from across the galaxy mingled and discussed the implications of her breakthrough. James found himself standing before a particularly complex diagram showing the interface between synthetic and organic neural networks. "The quantum entanglement patterns are remarkable," he murmured, mostly to himself. "You understand the underlying mechanics?" Naira's voice came from behind him, her tone carrying genuine surprise and interest. Up close, her violet eyes were even more striking, and her skin rippled with subtle patterns of curiosity, teal waves crossing over a deeper blue background. "The principles aren't that different from quantum drive systems," James explained, turning to face her. "Though I have to admit, your application is far more elegant than anything we've achieved in propulsion technology." Her skin flickered with pleasure, quick flashes of gold similar to her grandmother's. "Most engineers don't make that connection. They get too caught up in the biological aspects to see the mathematical similarities. Lieutenant Harrison has quite an impressive understanding of cross-species technology," Lady Voss interjected smoothly, appearing beside them with 2 glasses of iridescent Lacerian wine. "His work on your ship's quantum drive was extraordinary, Naira dear." James accepted the offered glass, noting how Lady Voss managed to slip away just as smoothly as she'd appeared, leaving them alone before an interactive hologram of neural pathways. The conversation flowed naturally from there, moving from technical discussions to broader philosophical implications of their work. "The real challenge," Naira explained, her skin now showing deeper blues of intellectual engagement, "is getting the organic systems to accept mechanical interfaces without rejection. Each species has different cellular structures, different immune responses. Have you considered using quantum resonance to match the mechanical component's frequency to the host's natural bioelectric field?" James suggested, sketching a quick diagram on his datapad. Naira's eyes widened, her skin suddenly blazing with brilliant copper excitement. That could work. The resonance patterns could be adjusted in real time too. She grabbed his datapad, fingers flying as she expanded on his idea. They spent the next 2 hours lost in theoretical discussions, oblivious to the gradually thinning crowd around them. It wasn't until a gentle chime announced the reception's end that they realized they were among the last guests remaining. "I should go," Naira said reluctantly, her skin showing swirls of regret in soft purple. "I have another presentation tomorrow at the Medical Academy. Would you like to continue this discussion over dinner?" James found himself asking. "There's an Earth-style restaurant that serves surprisingly good Lacerian cuisine. The owner's married to a Lacerian chef, they've created some interesting fusion dishes." Her skin brightened with pleasure. "I'd like that. Tomorrow evening?" The next few weeks fell into a pleasant pattern. Their dinner discussions ranged from theoretical physics to cultural exchange, each meeting revealing new layers of compatibility. James learned that Lasarian color changes weren't just emotional indicators but a complex language of their own. Naira discovered a passion for Earth's classical music, fascinated by how the vibrations affected her skin's bioluminescence. Lady Voss, meanwhile, maintained a carefully calculated distance while ensuring they kept, accidentally, encountering each other at various social and professional events. The station's garden dome became their favorite meeting spot, where earth plants and Lasarian bioluminescent flowers created a magical atmosphere during the artificial evening cycle. One evening, as they walked among the glowing flora, Naira stopped beside a hybrid rose that pulsed with soft blue light. "These flowers remind me of something my grandmother once told me," she said, her skin showing the deep green of contemplation. "She said that the most beautiful things in the universe come from the blending of different worlds." James watched as her skin shifted through subtle shades of vulnerability, a trust fall of colors that took his breath away. "Your grandmother is a wise woman," he said softly, reaching out to touch her hand. The contact sent a gentle electrical tingle through his fingers, a natural Lasarian response to emotional connection. She also said that when a Lasarian's colors match the rhythm of another's heartbeat, it means something special. Naira's skin was now pulsing in a steady pattern that James realized matched his own heartbeat perfectly. The sight made his heart race, which in turn affected her bioluminescence, creating a feedback loop of shared emotion. Their first kiss was both familiar and alien. Her skin glowed with intense patterns of joy and desire, sending pleasant electrical impulses wherever they touched. It was different from human intimacy, but somehow perfect in its own unique way. As they pulled apart, Naira's skin showed a complex pattern James had never seen before, a deep, rich purple shot through with gold and silver. "That's beautiful," he whispered. "What does it mean?" She smiled, touching his cheek gently. "It means my grandmother's matchmaking skills haven't failed yet." But their growing relationship was about to face its first real test. The next morning, James received an urgent message from Earth Command, while Naira was summoned to an emergency session of the Lasarian High Council. The political implications of their relationship were about to become far more complicated than either of them had imagined. As they parted ways that morning, neither knew that their private romance was about to become a matter of interstellar diplomacy. Lady Voss, however, was already preparing for the challenges ahead, her skin showing the determined gold of a master strategist at work. The message from Earth Command was blunt: "Lieutenant Harrison, your relationship with Dr. Naira Voss has come to the attention of the diplomatic corps. Effective immediately, you are to cease all personal contact pending a full security review." James stared at his comlink, a cold weight settling in his stomach. He'd known their relationship would raise eyebrows, but he hadn't expected such a swift and severe response. The attached briefing detailed concerns about technology transfer, cultural contamination, and potential security risks, all wrapped in the sterile language of bureaucratic fear. Meanwhile, in the Lasarian High Council chamber, Naira faced her own interrogation. The council members' skin flickered with various shades of concern and disapproval as they questioned her about her involvement with the human engineer. "Your research is vital to our species' future," Elder Rin declared, his skin pulsing with stern crimson. "We cannot risk its compromise through emotional entanglements with lesser-developed species." Lesser developed? Naira's skin flashed with indignant silver. Humans achieved faster-than-light travel less than a century after discovering electricity. Their rate of technological advancement is unprecedented. "Precisely our concern," another council member interjected, her skin showing worried purple streaks. "Their aggressive development makes them unpredictable. Dangerous." Lady Voss, who had remained silent until now, rose from her seat. Her skin displayed a complex pattern of authority and wisdom that demanded attention. "My fellow council members, perhaps we're approaching this from the wrong angle. The humans' drive for advancement could make them valuable allies rather than threats." Back on the station, James threw himself into his work, trying to ignore the conspicuous surveillance drones that now followed him everywhere. His engineering crew had noticed the changes, the armed guards at the repair bay entrance, the extra security scans, the whispered conversations that stopped when he entered a room. The situation reached a breaking point during a routine repair job on a Lasarian merchant vessel. As James worked on the ship's quantum drive, his security detail suddenly doubled, and a stern-faced Earth Command official appeared. "Lieutenant, step away from the drive," the official ordered. "You're being reassigned to Earth immediately. There are concerns about potential technology transfer through your association with Dr. Voss." James straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "With all due respect, sir, I'm in the middle of a critical repair. This ship's quantum matrix is destabilizing. If I don't finish the alignment sequence..." "That's an order, Lieutenant. Another engineer will take over." Before James could protest further, the ship's emergency systems activated. The quantum drive was going critical, exactly what he'd been trying to prevent. Warning lights flashed as the destabilization cascade began. "Everyone out!" James shouted, diving back toward the drive housing. "The containment field is failing." But instead of evacuating, he heard another set of footsteps rushing toward him. Naira appeared at his side, her skin glowing with determined blue-white intensity. "The quantum resonance is causing a feedback loop in the biological components," she said, quickly assessing the situation. "We need to synchronize the mechanical and organic systems." Together, they worked in perfect harmony, his engineering expertise combining with her understanding of biomechanical interfaces. As security personnel shouted evacuation orders behind them, James and Naira managed to stabilize the drive using the very principles they discussed during their theoretical conversations. When the crisis passed, they found themselves surrounded by a mix of Earth Command officials and Lasarian Council members who had apparently arrived during the emergency. Lady Voss stood among them, her skin showing a subtle pattern of satisfaction despite the serious situation. "As you can see," she addressed both groups, "their collaboration just prevented a disaster that could have damaged half the station. Perhaps now would be a good time to discuss the benefits of combining our people's knowledge rather than fearing its exchange?" The Earth official cleared his throat. While the lieutenant's actions were heroic, regulations regarding interspecies relationships are outdated, a new voice interrupted. Admiral Victor stepped forward, having arrived during the crisis. "I've reviewed the situation personally. Lieutenant Harrison's work here has advanced our understanding of quantum mechanics significantly. And Dr. Voss's research could revolutionize our medical technology. Together, they represent the kind of cooperation we should be encouraging, not preventing." The Lasarian Council members' skin showed varying shades of thoughtful blue and green. Elder Rin spoke first, his earlier crimson warning tones now softened to a more contemplative azure. "Perhaps we have been overly cautious. The quick thinking of these two just prevented a catastrophe none of us fully understood. There are still protocols to consider," the Earth official insisted, though with less conviction. "Then let us consider them together," Lady Voss suggested, her skin glowing with diplomatic gold. "As equals seeking to bridge our differences rather than enforce them." As the officials from both sides began discussing the logistics of revised protocols, James and Naira shared a quiet moment amid the chaos. Her skin pulsed in sync with his heartbeat once again, creating that intimate feedback loop that was uniquely theirs. "Your grandmother planned this somehow, didn't she?" James whispered, a slight smile playing on his lips. Naira's skin flickered with amused patterns. "The emergency was real, but I wouldn't put it past her to have arranged for all the right people to be here to witness how we handled it. The political storm wasn't over, there would be meetings, agreements to negotiate, protocols to establish. But as they stood together in the aftermath of the crisis, they had hope that their relationship could help forge a path forward for both their species." The weeks following the quantum drive incident transformed Starbase Centauri. What had been a simple repair station was now becoming a hub of human-Lasarian cooperation, though not without its challenges. James found himself at the center of a revolutionary joint engineering project, while Naira's research lab had doubled in size to accommodate new human medical researchers eager to study her breakthroughs. The cellular regeneration rate is twice what we expected, Naira explained to a mixed team of human and Lasarian scientists, her skin glowing with excited patterns as she displayed the latest test results. The quantum resonance matching seems to be the key, just like in the drive systems. James watched from the back of the lab, admiring how she commanded the room's attention. Their relationship had become something of a symbol for successful cooperation between their species, though that brought its own pressures. Every interaction was scrutinized, every joint project analyzed for hidden technology transfers. Later that evening, in the privacy of their newly shared quarters, Naira's skin showed subtle patterns of worry. "The Council is pushing for more concrete results," she said, settling beside him on their custom-designed couch, built to accommodate both human comfort needs and Lasarian bioluminescent responses. "They want proof that this cooperation benefits our people." "Earth commands the same," James admitted, running his fingers along her arm and watching the trails of responsive light follow his touch. "Admiral Victor's supporting us, but there's pressure to show practical applications." Their personal life had become intertwined with their professional challenges. Even something as simple as sharing living space had required careful diplomatic negotiations. The environmental controls had to be precisely calibrated to accommodate both human and Lasarian physiological needs. A chime at their door interrupted their conversation. Lady Voss entered, her skin showing complex patterns of concern and determination. "My dears, we have a situation. The progressive faction on the Council is losing ground to the traditionalists. They're calling for a review of all cross-species projects." James felt Naira tense beside him, her skin darkening with worry. The traditionalists were known for their belief in Lasarian superiority and isolation. Their gaining power could undo everything they'd worked for. "There's more," Lady Voss continued, her skin now showing strips of urgent red. "Earth's conservative coalition is making similar moves. They're proposing legislation to restrict interspecies technological cooperation." "They can't just shut everything down," James protested. "The medical breakthroughs alone. They can make it extremely difficult," Naira interrupted, her skin pulsing with troubled indigo. "Unless..." Lady Voss's skin suddenly brightened with that familiar gold of satisfaction. "Unless we give them something they can't ignore. Something that proves beyond doubt the value of our cooperation." James and Naira shared a look, recognizing the glint in Lady Voss's multifaceted eyes. She had a plan, as always. "The quantum resonance technology you developed together," she continued. "It's not just useful for medical applications or drive systems, is it?" Naira's skin flickered with sudden understanding. "The harmonic patterns, they could be used to stabilize the artificial wormholes Earth's been trying to create. And with Lasarian bioorganic interfaces." James caught on, his excitement building. "We could create living ships capable of safely navigating them." Lady Voss's skin sparkled triumphantly. "Exactly. But for this to work, we need something more than just technological cooperation. We need to show that our species can truly join together." Her meaning was clear. A formal union between James and Naira would be more than just a personal commitment, it would be a powerful political statement. "The traditionalists will fight it," Naira said softly, her skin showing swirling patterns of love and concern. "Let them," James replied, taking her hand and watching as her skin pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "We've faced worse." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. While they worked on combining their technologies for the Wormhole project, they also began planning a ceremony that would honor both human and Lasarian traditions. It would be the first officially sanctioned human-Lasarian marriage, a template for future unions. The technical challenges were immense. Creating a stable wormhole was difficult enough, but developing a bioorganic interface that could safely guide a ship through one required everything they knew about both human and Lasarian technology. They worked around the clock, their personal and professional lives completely merged. "The quantum field is collapsing again," James called out during their 6th test simulation. "The biological components can't handle the strain." Naira's skin pulsed with concentration as her fingers flew over the controls. "What if we synchronize the field's resonance with the natural frequency of the neural network? Like how our bodies synchronize when we're together?" It was a breakthrough moment. Just as their relationship had found harmony between their different biologies, they found a way to harmonize their technologies. The bioorganic quantum drive they created wasn't just a technological achievement, it was a physical manifestation of what their species could accomplish together. As they watched the successful simulation results scroll across their screens, James pulled Naira close. Her skin glowed with joy and triumph, creating patterns he'd learned to read as clearly as any human expression. They had done more than prove their technologies could work together, they had shown that love could bridge the gap between stars. Lady Voss, watching from the control room above, allowed her skin to show its full spectrum of satisfaction. Sometimes, she mused, the best diplomatic strategies were matters of the heart. The Grand Assembly Hall of Starbase Centauri had been transformed. Crystalline structures grown from Lasarian biotechnology intertwined with traditional Earth flowers, creating an environment that celebrated both cultures. The air hummed with a subtle harmonic frequency that caused the Lasarian guest's skin to shimmer in synchronized patterns while providing a sense of peaceful well-being to the humans present. James stood at the front of the hall, wearing a formal uniform specially designed for the occasion, traditional Earth military styling enhanced with Lasarian bioluminescent threads that responded to his emotional state. Currently, they pulsed with a mix of joy and nervousness that made the attending Lasarian skin ripple with appreciative understanding. The ceremony would be broadcast across both Earth and Lasarian space. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a statement about the future of both species. The successful test of their bioorganic wormhole drive the previous week had silenced many critics, but today would determine whether their personal union would be equally accepted. Lady Voss entered first, her skin radiating pure gold as she took her place as ceremony leader, a role traditionally held by the family matriarch in Lasarian culture. She wore elaborate robes that told the story of both species' histories in intricate, glowing patterns. When Naira appeared, the entire hall fell silent. She wore a dress that seemed to be made of living light, each step creating ripples of color that reflected her emotions. The traditional Lasarian marriage patterns flowed across her skin, interweaving with new designs that represented her love for James. She had spent weeks working with human artists to create patterns that would be meaningful to both cultures. Today, Lady Voss began, her voice carrying the harmonic overtones that made Lasarian speech so musical. "We gather to celebrate not just the union of two hearts, but the joining of two civilizations. Through James and Naira, we have learned that our differences are not barriers, but bridges." The ceremony blended traditions from both worlds. They exchanged Earth-style rings, specially crafted with quantum-resonant crystals that would pulse in harmony with Naira's bioluminescence. They also performed the Lasarian bonding ritual, where James learned to create specific emotional states that would trigger corresponding patterns in Naira's skin, a feat that impressed even the most traditional Lasarian elders. "The patterns he produces in her bioluminescence," one elder whispered to another, their skin showing surprised pink tones, "they're as clear as any Lasarian could achieve." The most powerful moment came during their vows. As James spoke, the quantum-resonant crystals throughout the hall began to pulse in harmony with his heartbeat. Naira's skin synchronized with the rhythm, creating a display of light and color that moved many guests to tears. "With this union," Lady Voss declared, "we forge a new path among the stars. Let it be known that from this day forward, our peoples walk together." As if in response to her words, the station's systems registered an unusual phenomenon. The quantum field generated by their combined ceremonial technology had created a spontaneous harmonic resonance with the station's new bioorganic systems. The entire station began to glow with patterns that matched Naira's marriage colors. Admiral Victor, watching from the front row, smiled as he read the technical data on his tablet. The effect was completely unexpected but entirely beneficial. The station's efficiency had increased by 12%. It was yet another example of how combining their technologies could yield surprising rewards. The reception that followed was a celebration of successful cultural fusion. Human classical music played on instruments modified with Lasarian biotechnology created sounds that affected both species on a deep emotional level. The food combined Earth and Lasarian cuisine in ways that respected both biologies while creating new flavors that neither culture had experienced before. Lady Voss moved through the crowd, her skin glowing with diplomatic gold as she watched her carefully orchestrated plan reach its full fruition. The traditionalists who had opposed the Union were now engaged in animated discussions with human scientists about potential applications of combined technologies. Earth officials who had been skeptical were obviously impressed by the sophisticated blending of cultures. James and Naira hardly noticed the political implications of their celebration. They danced together, his movements causing patterns of joy to flow across her skin, her bioluminescence creating an aura that seemed to embrace him. They had created something entirely new, not just human, not just Lasarian, but a beautiful hybrid of both. As the celebration continued, news arrived from the experimental ships in orbit. The bioorganic wormhole drive they had developed had just successfully completed its first long-range test. Stable wormholes were now a reality, thanks to the combination of human engineering and Lasarian biotechnology. "You planned all of this, didn't you?" James asked Lady Voss as she joined them for a quiet moment away from the crowd. "Right from the moment I helped you with your ship?" Lady Voss's skin showed patterns of both amusement and wisdom. "I merely created an opportunity. The two of you did all the real work. Though I must admit, the results exceeded even my expectations." Naira touched her grandmother's hand, their skin patterns synchronizing in the way of close family members. "You taught me that the greatest discoveries come from being open to new possibilities. And now you've taught that lesson to both our peoples," Lady Voss replied, her skin showing the deep purple of pride and love. As the twin suns set outside the station's windows, creating a spectacular display of light that seemed to celebrate with them, James and Naira stood together looking out at the stars. Their achievement was more than personal, more than political. They had shown that love could bridge the gap between different worlds, different biologies, different ways of thinking. Their union marked the beginning of a new era of cooperation between humans and Lasarians. But more importantly, it proved that in the vast expanse of space, the heart's ability to adapt and grow knows no bounds. As their reflected image shimmered in the station's windows, his uniform glowing softly, her skin pulsing with joy, they stood as living proof that love truly is universal.